Hey there everyone, I just wanted to make a video just to say a little more about me. Started out working on cars about 15 years ago. The 850 that you see on the right there is actually the first car I ever bought. I bought a manual for the car, service repair manual, read the thing from cover to cover. I also read the owner's manual from cover to cover, and decided it was, a good idea to take care of it. Started off doing the very, very basics, checking the oil, checking the tyres, so on and so forth, and, worked my way up doing small jobs. Wasn't running too good one day, so I replaced the spark plugs, it fixed the problem. Early on I had a few bad experiences taking the car to mechanics. I had a leak in the exhaust, took it into the mechanics. They said they would seal up the joint and put it back together. They couldn't even fix that properly, so I took it on myself to learn as much as I could and do as much as I could myself in order to save a bit of money, in order to, I felt, often more confident, having done the work myself because I know it's done properly. And, well, I've always enjoyed it as well. Other cars I've owned, less than a year after I bought this 850, I actually purchased a Vauxhall Vectra. It was the facelifted version of the original Vectra, 2.2 LS, and the 850 came back onto the road and the Vectra was sold. After that, as a second vehicle, I had a 1972 Land Rover. It's a short wheelbase Series 3 with a 2.3 litre petrol engine with a slightly dodgy carburetor. So that thing would, it was great fun, but it'd do about 9 miles to the gallon, and I thought the thing was going to bankrupt me. So after that, I bought again. It was another Land Rover. It was again a 1972 short wheelbase, but that one had the 2.3 litre diesel engine, and that gave decent economy. Now for that Land Rover, I actually did a complete restoration job on it, stripped it right down and rebuilt it on a new chassis. Isn't much on one of those Series 3 Land Rovers I haven't done. I've rebuilt the engines. Only significant thing I can think that I haven't done is I've never opened up a gearbox on one of those. Eventually got a little bit bored of those. Sold the Land Rover on, then I purchased a Land Rover Defender. That was a 93 with a 200 series TDI engine. It's a lot more powerful than the Series 3, much more usable in everyday conditions, and as such, when I went away to university and didn't want to have the expense of running two vehicles, I actually took my 850 off the road again, parked it up in here, and after that, I used the Defender as my daily driver, and it was an experience. Not so sure that I'm just going a little bit soft as I age, but I eventually got fed up of driving the thing up and down the motorway. It's very noisy above about 50 miles an hour. For me, it was intolerable above 60. So while I was still studying, the Defender started to have a few problems, and I was getting a bit sick of driving it every day. I knew that my 850 needed a few things doing, so I went out and bought a 2002 V70 D5, which is a 2.4 turbo diesel. It's the P2 version of the V70. It's a completely different car from these P80s. Looking back, really shouldn't have bought the thing. It had been pretty well abused by its previous owners, but it was cheap. I thought it was good at the time. Kept that for a year or so. In fact, maybe not even a year. And I came across a 95 model 850 Estate. That was a pretty nice car, cosmetically, low miles. I really liked it in a lot of respects. Unfortunately, the transmission started to make some really strange noises, and I, at the time, didn't have the inclination to try and fix it, so that one was sold on. I actually replaced that with another V70. Again, it was another P2 V70. That one was a 2.5D, the manual transmission. It was in a lot better condition than the 2002 model I had. Everything worked. Honestly, it drove faultlessly, but I just didn't like it. So after I finished studying, I sold it on. The 850, a stage 0 service. It got a new timing belt, full standard service, new PCV kit. I even fixed the SAS motor and replaced the valve. I got sick of looking at the lambda light on the dashboard. Checked the car from bumper to bumper, sent it for its MOT, and it passed nicely. I then dealt with the problems on the Defender. The biggest one was replacing the clutch. That was quite a job. Had the welding done that was necessary, put that in for MOT, and that passed as well. So that brings us to about the summer of 2014. Coming into 2015, I had an opportunity for some self-employment, whereby I would have the need for an estate car, and I would have to do some long journeys. So I sold the Defender and purchased a Dacia Logan Estate. If I could put the clock back, I'd have taken the time to track down a good P80 Estate, done what was necessary to bring it up to a standard where I could use it every day. But at the time, I didn't have the inclination, and realistically I didn't have the time either. So bought the Dacia, put it to work, and it did the job quite nicely. The self-employment ultimately dried up, and I sold the car on. Just as I was selling the Dacia on, I started to think about buying another vehicle, because I didn't really want to have my 850 as being the only vehicle. Partly because it's an older car. I think I prefer to have, if I'm going to try and run vehicles this age, I prefer to have access to more than one in case something goes wrong. And also, the 850 is a car I intend to keep in the long run, so I didn't want to go back to putting too many miles onto it. So I started to think, what would I want? I was always very happy with my 850. Only things I could really say about it was that I wish it used a bit less fuel. It was a bit faster. I should say my 850 is a 2 litre 10 valve petrol, which, so far as I'm aware, is the smallest engine they ever produced in the P80s. I'm not even sure that one was ever sold outside of Europe. In fact, so as I say, I wanted something equally as comfortable, a bit more economical, a bit faster. I would prefer an automatic gearbox this time, as my 850 is a 5-speed. And got to thinking about it, and you probably gather where this is going by what's parked on the left-hand side there. There isn't really much I would change about the car. I'm very happy with it. So, I thought I'd go looking for another P80 series Volvo. Wasn't actually expecting to finally find one of these because they're pretty rare, so I'd resign myself to buying, 2.5 litre 20 valve petrol with an auto box. Yes, I'd get the performance and I'd get the automatic gearbox. I just have to live with the consumption. But great stroke of luck, I actually found this for sale not too far from here. Very cheap. Had some problems, of course, but slowly worked my way through them. I had the typical P80 sort of issues. I had the ABS light was on. Turned out to be contacts broken within the controller, so that was reconditioned and reinstalled. Light has gone out, it's never been back. Airbag light was also on. The connection for the driver's airbag behind the steering wheel had basically disintegrated over time, so replaced that. It was losing. I could tell even when I went to look at buying it that it was losing water from somewhere. The water level actually dropped while I had the car sitting, running, just listening to the engine. So in the back of my mind, I was like, it's going to be the heater core, it's going to be the heater core. Checked through the engine bay, couldn't find anything, there's no sign of a head gasket problem. So I didn't even bother lifting the carpets until I'd had the thing hauled home. And sure enough, when I did it, you could actually see it dripping out of the heater core, so that was that. But the final thing to say about this S70 is that it is a TDI, which even here in the UK is very rare to find. Again, I don't think this engine was ever actually sold anywhere outside of Europe, and from what I can gather, it was never massively popular because back in the mid to late 90s, petrol was a lot cheaper than it is now, so it just never was a big seller. Though it is a very nice combination to have in these cars. It's 2.5 litre with an automatic gearbox, and it does make for a very nice drive. And it ticks the boxes of what I wanted. It's a good 10 or 12 miles per gallon better on fuel than my 850. I suspect if you bought one with a manual gearbox, it'd be about 15 miles per gallon better. As I've mentioned, already fixed a lot of the common problems you find on these cars. Did the standard things, filters, brakes, etc. Got some new tyres on it. After completing all the the standard servicing tasks, the last thing that was left to do was to replace the timing belts, and I found it very difficult to track down information on how to do it on this car because most of the manuals out there that you can buy, although they cover these cars very well, they don't cover the turbo diesel engine. So what I decided to do was to start a YouTube channel which hopefully will help people with the unique aspects of P80 diesel cars. That for example, the timing belt change on this is radically different from doing it on the i5 petrol. I found it very difficult to track down the information, so hopefully a little bit of time, it will all be here in one place. I hope that you'll find the channel to be useful. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. I'll see you in the next one.